What do you eat on one meal a day? How do you make it safe and comfortable and still get all the benefits? Coming right up. So, what is one meal a day? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. You just eat one meal a day, shrinking your feeding window down to about 1 hour. You eat all the food within that window and you don't eat for the rest of the day. Along with the ketogenic diet, which is incredibly popular, there's also talk about intermittent fasting and one meal a day, and they're all just variations of the same thing. It's all about cutting back on carbs and reducing insulin resistance. What drives insulin resistance is the amount of carbs that you eat and how often you eat. Every time you eat a carb, you drive insulin, and the more often you eat, the more often you stimulate insulin. The reverse of that is to cut back on carbs and eat less frequently. The extreme version of that, if you want to call it that, is you just eat once a day. So why would you do that? Well, it is a very powerful way of reversing insulin resistance. Another benefit is that it saves time. You don't have to spend so much time eating and preparing meals. Additionally, you give your body a break. Every time you eat, you have to jumpstart your digestive machinery. You have to make enzymes, move things around, and churn the food, which puts a certain wear and tear on your intestinal lining. If you keep eating every few hours, then the stomach and lining never really get a break. However, if you eat once a day, it gives your body a lot of time to rest and repair. This goes for all your internal organs, your liver, gallbladder, pancreas, digestive tract, etc. The next question is, how do you do this? How do you do it comfortably and safely? First of all, I recommend that you get fat adapted first. This means you should adopt a keto lifestyle and start reducing your carbohydrates so your body knows how to use fat. That would be step 1, because now you're more prepared for one meal a day. Then you start shrinking the window as you get more fat adapted, and you won't feel as hungry. You might notice you can skip breakfast or a meal here and there without going crazy. Start by shrinking your feeding window. For example, you could eat at 8 a.m. and have your last meal at 8 p.m., giving you a 12-hour feeding window. Then you can shrink that by skipping breakfast, eating at noon, and then maybe at 8 p.m., giving you an 8-hour feeding window. Gradually shrink that down to maybe 6 hours, and then 4, until you're comfortable eating within a 4-hour window. This means you might eat at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m., with nothing outside of that window. Now your body is pretty much ready to go to one meal a day, where you eat all your food within a 1-hour window. Doing it this way isn't a shock to the body. You get fat adapted and your body gets used to the concept of eating in a shorter period of time. Next, we want to think about a few additional things to make it healthy as well. You don't want to crash your metabolism or get into starvation mode. The risk of this is much less if you're fat adapted first. If you're not and you start starving, your body goes into crisis mode and starts preserving energy. That's not the idea. You want to keep your body burning fat. But part of that is also not cutting your calories too much. Try to keep it at maybe 70 to 80%. So if you're eating 2,000 calories on a normal basis, which is your basic energy requirement, you probably don't want to cut it below 1,500 to 1,600 calories a day. The goal is not to go hungry. It's just to give your body a rest, reduce insulin resistance, and burn fat. It makes it a lot harder to get all that quality food and nutrients into a single meal, because that could be a really large meal, and you may not even be able to eat that much. So, you want to look at quality foods. Consider eating things like an omelet with lots of vegetables. Eggs are nutrient-dense, and you can add some good olive oil and raw organic cheese if you can tolerate it. You could probably eat 1,200 to 1,500 calories in a single meal and be okay with that. Another trick would be to make some bulletproof coffee. Even though that wouldn't strictly stick within the 1-hour feeding window, you could sip it throughout the day. If you make bulletproof coffee with some butter and MCT oil, it won't significantly influence insulin and won't trigger any insulin response. Therefore, you're still technically fasting. If you use a tablespoon of butter and a couple of tablespoons of MCT oil, you could get about 400 calories there, sort of for free. If you get the 400 in the coffee, now you just have to eat maybe 1,200 in your big meal. So, it's not strictly one meal a day, but it's a way to stick to the principles of doing that. Again, think about quality food. Don't use anything artificial, synthetic, or processed. Aim for the best quality food you can find: organic, grass-fed, raw, whole vegetables, and all that good stuff. As far as percentages go, this isn't exact for everybody, but a typical breakdown would be about 75% from fat, 20% from protein, and no more than 5% from carbohydrates. You might be able to get away with a little more protein, and maybe even carbs, because you're spreading out the feeding window and increasing your fasting period, which will keep insulin really low even if you increase protein. But if you can keep this really low, then you're better off. So, is it safe? Is it necessary? I think it depends on your goals. I don't think you necessarily want to do it forever because it does limit your food choices a little bit. Eating everything in one meal can be difficult for many people. If your goal is weight loss, then I would say go ahead and do it for a few months, gauge your results, and then cycle in some regular keto and intermittent fasting. I would suggest trying to stick with 80% from fat, 15% from protein, and no more than 5% from carbohydrates, depending on the person. Some people can handle a little more carbs, but again, this is individual. I think the top level for most people would be maybe 10% from carbohydrates, which on a 2,000-calorie diet would be about 50 grams. If you're still in ketosis at that level, then I think that would be the upper limit. If you're not, then figure out where that limit is for you. If you've lost weight, feel good, and are stable in your health situation, now is the time to tweak it to see where you feel the best. I could still suggest one meal a day occasionally because there are great benefits to giving your intestinal tract a rest once in a while. It also kicks in something called autophagy, where your body increases its recycling properties, cleaning up junk proteins and old debris from broken cells. You essentially recycle better during autophagy, and you kick it in at a much higher level with a 23 to 24-hour fast. But if you don't need to lose weight, then I would suggest mostly sticking with a low-carb diet with intermittent fasting, with a feeding window of 6 to 12 hours for the most part. That's basically what I do. I usually eat within a 6 to 8 hour window. Occasionally, I'll have breakfast and then might have a 12-hour feeding window, but that's not the norm. Again, I don't have insulin resistance, so weight loss is not my goal. I'm just trying to find out where I function best. At this point, you might want to experiment and see where you feel the best. I still don't think you should go into grains or any inflammatory starches. But if you want to, you could try getting up to maybe 15% on the carbs. That's still a relatively low-carb diet, and if you're physically active, I think you could manage that. Some people might function a little better at that level, but figure out where that number is for you. For me, 15% of carbs would be about 75 grams. I probably aim a good bit lower. That would be my highest number on any given day. For the most part, you want to stay somewhere in the range of 5 to 15% of carbohydrate calories. Keep in mind that you want to learn some principles. There's not a one-size-fits-all for everybody. But once you understand the underlying principles, you can start playing around with it and see what it takes for you to lose the weight you need to get off, and what it takes for you to maintain and feel your best. Please share this video with as many people as you can, because we want to help lots of people out there get healthy and understand the underlying principles, rather than just little things to do. That's how you make it sustainable and get the most out of it. Please share your comments if you want to give this a try. Let me know how it goes. And as always, thanks for watching.